Hi there, and welcome to the Circling the Bases podcast. My name is DJ Short, and I'm joined here, as always, by Drew Silva. This is our latest position preview episode for the 2021 season. We've covered all the infield positions so far, so you can go back in our archives to check those out. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just search Circling the Bases, and you can access all those previous episodes. But today, we are moving on to outfielders. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder that the NBC Sports EDGE Fantasy Baseball magazine is available in stores now. The online guide is also available and has everything you need to get prepared for your fantasy draft. And it's also constantly updated throughout spring training to get you prepared for all your drafts. We just are working on a mock draft that we did the other night, right, Drew?
Yep.
When are you going to put that up?
I'm hoping to get it up early tomorrow. Prep for these podcasts takes a long time.
Especially the position preview. This is the most work we put into. And not to say we're lazy during the year, but these are pretty labor-intensive episodes, and I think we get a lot out of these episodes for our own prep. So I put a lot of thought into it as well.
Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on the spot when you're going to put that on the draft guide. But.
The goal is to get it up Friday afternoonish. I'm almost halfway there. I've got it all written out and formatted and everything, but yeah, that'll be up soon.
Cool. So I mean, the point is we just have fresh stuff going up all the time, and that'll be the case all the way up until the end of spring training. So if you're going to do your draft in early March or late March, we got you covered either way with up-to-date information. You can go to NBCSportsEdge.com/MLB draft guide to get started. So outfielders here, Drew, I think it's if you have a chance to get, the top 5, top 6 outfielders, I feel like you're getting first round production. I also think there's plenty of useful outfielders later, but I think to me, the top 6 or so outfielders, they're on a tier by themselves. And I guess you could maybe say, the top outfielder here, who I don't know if there was any debate between us, but, could be number 1 overall in terms of raw production.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's the largest selection of position players to choose from. So it's the deepest position. And like you said, some of the best overall players on the overall draft board are at the top here, a handful of first round picks, 5 category producers everywhere, even late. In a 5 outfielder league, it can get a little frightening at the end, but 3 outfielder leagues, there are interesting options available late in drafts. I feel like we should just get into it because there's a lot to cover. We're not going to hit on everybody. There's just too many names, but we'll definitely run through our top 20 and then talk about some guys we like or who are kind of controversial in terms of ADP.
All right, so why don't you do your top 20 outfielders, or as far along as you want to read, I guess.
I'll just keep going to
all the way to 50.
Oh no! All right, number 1, Ronald Acuna Jr. Number 2, Mookie Betts. 3, Juan Soto. 4, Mike Trout. 5, Christian Yelich. 6, Cody Bellinger. 7, Bryce Harper. 8, Kyle Tucker. 9, Luis Robert. 10, George Springer. 11, Whit Merrifield. 12, Eloy Jimenez. 13, Marcelo Ozuna. 14, Aaron Judge. 15, Starling Marte. 16, Randy Arozarena. 17, Brandon Lau. 18, Kevin Biggio. 19, Yordan Alvarez. And 20, Trent Grisham.
Okay. Yeah, I think we agree, especially early on. But there's just little differences as we move forward along here. So let's start at the top with Acuna. And I think across the board, power, speed, everything you want out of a number 1 overall pick. Hit just 250 last year. He strikes out a bit. So I think if you're, points leagues are becoming more popular and, the strikeouts will count against him, but he gets on base a ton. He's at the top of that Braves lineup. He's going to score a ton of runs. So I don't think you can really poke holes in it too much. I think at this point, especially with, and we'll get to Mike Trout a bit, with the speed that Acuna can give you. And I think, just given the age that Acuna is, I think it's only a matter of time before that, his approach gets better and better at the plate. He gets more selective, just attacks, better pitches to hit, and that batting average is going to start to go up too. So I'm not going to worry too much about the batting average because everything else is just so elite.
Yeah, just turned 23 years old this past December. I felt a little sad that Acuna was trending on Twitter the night Fernando Tatis Jr. signed that 10-year, $340 million deal. Acuna signed in April 2019 for 8 years, $100 million. And they were pretty much at the same points in their career when those deals came together, at least in terms of games played and level of production. But yeah, Acuna is the number one overall pick this year in a large majority of drafts, and rightly so. His 162-game career average of fantasy scoring numbers, 281 batting average, 42 homers, 32 steals, 100 RBIs, 130 runs. The StatCast metrics love him, backing up what he's done. The walk rate rose last season, which I think is an encouraging sign moving forward. And he does strike out a lot, but he makes hard contact and it has been so great that I think you feel okay about it. He suffered a wrist injury early on last year, and it popped up again in late September, but like you wouldn't know it going by the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. The wrist injury, and maybe you have to look at that a little bit too in terms of his production. So, and I think there was a certain point last year where maybe some folks were down on him or disappointed, but that hasn't really impacted his standing coming into this year at all. So let's move on to number 2. I think we both agreed Mookie Betts.
Yeah.
It was tough for me because I think you could make a case for Juan Soto because I think Juan Soto is the best hitter in baseball right now.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah. Mike Trout is right there too, but and I guess there's kind of a similarity there between Soto and Trout, but you have to go with Betts, I think, just because of the across-the-board production. He's going to give you some speed. That's the difference between Betts and Soto and Trout. And pretty much Betts was as advertised last year with the Dodgers, hit 292, 16 homers, 39 RBIs, 10 steals, 47 runs scored over 55 games. I mean, that's a little bit of everything, and it's pretty darn good as well. He was a little bit more aggressive last year with the Dodgers, but still very patient. Didn't strike out much even with that aggressiveness. Hits the ball hard. We know the speed's good. At the top of a very good lineup. Ultimately you're splitting hairs with these like elite top outfielders, but I think if you're looking for safety, across all categories, you won't have to worry about speed for a little bit. Maybe you can get a pitcher with your next pick or a slugger. But taking care of that speed early on, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah, Betts is, the leadoff man for the reigning World Series champs, and he was great for them in his first year there to the shock of no one. 48 homer, 30 steal pace during the regular season, 927 OPS. Had a pretty good postseason, too, in case you missed it. The stolen bases dropped his final year in Boston, but he's never been caught stealing a ton, even that year. So it felt like that would return in Los Angeles, and it did from like a pace perspective. I don't think he'll be actually a 48 homer hitter. I don't think he'll necessarily be a 40 homer hitter like the pace from 2020 suggests, but like 35, I think is within the range of outcomes, or low 30s. Plus he has a 301 career batting average, hit 346 in 2018 when he won American League MVP, finished second to Freddie Freeman for the NL MVP last year. 28 years old. I think it's justified that he's going either second or third overall in drafts. Tatis has sometimes gone second in the drafts that I've done, but Betts is usually top 3.
Do you think it hurts a little bit that there's not going to be a DH in the National League for him?
Maybe.
If it turns out to be that way.
Yeah,
I'm still just waiting for the 11th hour for them to say, you know what, never mind.
I was going to say I'm not totally sold that they don't build that into the health and safety protocols at some point.
Yeah, but I would certainly not that I don't like Mookie Betts already, but like the idea of them being some ducks on the pond for him when he hits leadoff. That Dodgers lineup has enough options they can mix and match, and there's going to be some good hitters at the bottom of the lineup that could only help him.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about that with a lot of NL guys who, and maybe we haven't talked about it enough in previous episodes, that did really well in 2020 because, maybe they weren't having to deal with hitting in front of the pitcher or, the pitcher setting the table as the lineup turns over. It is a factor, certainly, with National League guys.
Yeah.
So I had Juan Soto 3. I'm sure you did as well. Or
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he would be my candidate. This is not a fantasy relevant thing, but he'd be my candidate for the next Tatis-like contract extension among players that aren't close to free agency. Just been a star, and he's under club control through 2024 at the moment. And Mike Rizzo, the Nationals GM and president, acknowledged that the two sides talked about it last spring, and they'll probably talk again this spring. Those initial negotiations apparently didn't go very far. But yeah, I mean, the Nats payroll drops big time going into 2022, $199 million in commitments this year to $69 million in commitments next year, not including Trey Turner's final year of arbitration, which could be a big number. But yeah, I mean, Soto is already one of the very best hitters in the sport at age 22. The power, of course, and I think the plate discipline is just as impressive. He's like a baseball genius, which you can see in his 23 steals and 28 career attempts, despite like a somewhat average sprint speed.
Yeah.
He said he wants to steal more bases this year, dedicated his offseason to improving his overall agility. I've seen him go second overall in a mock draft. I like him fourth overall. Maybe because I don't think it's actually a good idea that he attempts to steal more bases in like a real life sense. Just worry about hitting extra bases.
He's such like a savvy player that I wouldn't discount the chance that maybe he could get to like 20. I don't think it's crazy, but I wouldn't bank on it. And anyway, it would just kind of be like the cherry on top of everything else he can do. He's going to be a counting stat monster and anyway, and as far as homers, RBIs, or runs scored, hit for average, you can probably bank on that at this point. His OPS last year was the highest since like Barry Bonds was still around, and I can only I just wish that it could have been a normal season, and we would have seen how far that could have gone. You look at it a little bit differently because it was only what was it, 48 games that he played in? 47 games?
That's about right.
Because of the COVID thing early in the year. But he was another one of those players who didn't really miss a beat. And I think even Soto said that he thought maybe it was like a false positive. But
yeah, I don't think he had COVID.
Yeah.
Like DC had those restrictions that if you like returned a positive test, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks. Wasn't that kind of the case?
Yeah, it seemed like he was really, really frustrated about it because he couldn't get like I think you had to get like 3 negative tests in a row or something like that, if I'm remembering right.
And he like couldn't pass them or something, but
yeah,
I think he was asymptomatic at least. Who knows?
Right. But again, that's a missed opportunity. We could have seen what he could have done over 60 games, but overall, like it would have been nice to see what these numbers could have looked like over 162. It might have been really, really insane, but we'll never know. But again, he's only 22, so I think the best is probably still, yet to come with him. So Mike Trout, our number 4 outfielder, I think we both agree on that.
Yep.
And Mike Trout said himself, last year was a bad year for Mike Trout.
I mean, he had his lowest career finish.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, at 5th. He finished his lowest career finish in the AL MVP voting, and he was 5th.
Yeah.
Second for MVP as a rookie in 2012, won AL Rookie of the Year that year, obviously. Second in 2013, won it in 2014, second in 2015, won it in 2016, won it again in 2019. The steals have tailed off, and I'm sure that's a topic that you wanted to bring up, but he could get to double-digit steals if he wanted to.
Yeah.
94th percentile in sprint speed last season. He's only been caught on 5 of 41 attempts since the beginning of 2018. His overall fantasy ceiling is still incredibly high. Like there's a chance he just puts it all together. And I think the floor is as safe as anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think if you wanted to take him, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but like if for some reason you did get the number 5 or number 6 pick, and usually in like a 12-team standard mixed draft, like picking 6, you're kind of like annoyed by that.
Yeah.
But this year, if Mike Trout fell to you, you'd be pretty happy with that. And there's a
Super
very
happy.
good chance that Trout could be the number 1 overall fantasy player this
Yeah.
year.
And the steals have been up and down throughout his career. Like what did he have, like 11 one year, then 40 the next year? It's almost like if he decides to do it, he'll do it. So maybe we see an upswing. He's not an old guy, age 29 this year. 176 career OPS plus, which currently ranks 5th all time behind Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Barry Bonds, and Lou Gehrig. You're talking about a guy entering his age 29 season. He projects to pass names like Tony Gwynn, Edgar Martinez, Barry Larkin on the all-time career WAR leaderboard. Yeah, I mean, you can get him 5th overall, sometimes at number 6. That's the first time you could say that since he debuted.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And with Trout, the fly ball rate has been up since 2019. It does seem like he's, really focusing more on the power. We saw 17 homers in 53 games last year. So if you're not going to get the 20 steal Mike Trout anymore, you might get the 45 homer Mike Trout, which, is still pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I had Yelich 5.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a bad 2 months last year. Lots of swings, lots of misses. But when he did make contact, it was hard contact. And his 2019 season and 2018 season rank high in like the list of best individual fantasy seasons of the last couple of decades. So, like, are you worried or are you happy to get him at the end of the first round now as opposed to 2nd or 3rd overall, which is where he was this time last year? I don't have a great answer to that. I'd lean more toward happy because 2020 feels like more noise than signal, if that's an expression. It's not as safe feeling, though, I'll say that, because maybe just because as humans we're fickle.
If I got him at the end of the first round, I'd be thrilled. I think he's another player that could deliver like number 1 overall type production.
Sure.
And just because things were so weird for him. The strikeout rate was 30.8%. That's just way up from his norm and kind of what we know him as being. It was 20.3% in 2019. His BABIP was 259. It's 354 for his career. And like you were saying, when he did make contact, he was elite basically across the board. Average exit velocity, hard hit percentage still was 80th percentile in barrel percentage, according to Baseball Savant. Still very good speed. The patience was there last year. So to me, I want to throw a lot of it out. He's still in a hitter-friendly home ballpark.
Yep.
So I'm all in on him. I'm more in on Yelich than I am on Bellinger.
Yeah. Did you have him 6th?
I actually moved Bryce Harper ahead of Bellinger tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Bellinger, we talked about it at first base too. Did the weird swing change last year between spring training 1.0 and summer camp. He was my number 6 guy, but I don't know. I'd like to hear your take on Harper, actually. If you want to hear our Bellinger breakdown, you could go to first base. He did have surgery on his shoulder in November and was a couple days behind in camp, but is expected to be ready for opening day. Yeah, I don't know. His numbers have been up and down, and I feel like Harper's a little more steady if you're just looking for power, certainly.
Yeah, I think Harper's just kind of stabilized over the past couple of years. The batting average, I think, is going to be a moving target with him, but, led the NL with 49 walks last year, more walks than strikeouts, 420 on base percentage. The power's there. He runs a bit more than Mike Trout does at this stage. I think he's not quite obviously in that stratosphere. For a while, we were hoping it would be like Harper versus Trout forever. I don't think Harper is quite that guy, but, last year you look at the popular batted ball metrics, he was 92nd percentile or above in like all of the ones we usually talk about: average exit velocity, hard hit percentage, barrel percentage, homer happy ballpark there in Philadelphia. Hopefully a deeper, healthier lineup there for the Phillies, full year of Bohm being there, Andrew McCutchen at the top. I just feel like maybe he's a little bit safer than Bellinger, who's coming off that shoulder surgery. And I'm assuming Bellinger will be fine for opening day, but you worry a little bit, like, is the shoulder surgery going to impact his power? Is taking this kind of time away from hitting, is that going to impact him, especially a year where he had these kind of mechanical issues with his swing? So that's just kind of, it's nitpicking, but it's enough for me to just say, you know what, I'm going to take Harper and not sweat these extra details.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if he's the same guy that he's been with the Phillies so far, and that lineup is healthy, especially and plays to its true talent, he can be an MVP candidate again and lead the league in RBIs and possibly home runs too. 99th percentile in expected slugging percentage, and he's up there like in that percentile or close to it every year. Age 28 season. Yeah, I'm buying on Harper. You were pretty high on Harper too last year. He's going 20th overall, which is pretty much the same spot that he was going this time last spring, and then I guess into summer too.
Yeah. I mean, that's no knock on Bellinger. I have them very, very close.
Sure, these are all at least second round picks.
And it's very possible that Bellinger could outproduce Harper, but I don't think Harper's going to do anything where you're going to feel like, man, that was a wasted pick.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Very safe floor with a huge ceiling, at least in four of the categories.
Yeah.
And not a total zero in steals. I had Kyle Tucker 8th. I think maybe that was aggressive, but
I have him 8th too.
Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen this year for him, and that's probably not a bold prediction. We got a taste of the potential last year. Especially, he had sort of an on and off first 3 weeks. Over his final 39 games, though, he batted .309 with a .981 OPS, 8 homers, and 5 triples, 5 stolen bases. That was over his final 39 games. That's a 34 homer, 21 steal pace over 162 games. It's also a very small sample, but all the data is small from 2020. He was a force over much larger samples in the minors. 998 plate appearances at AAA with 58 homers and 50 steals in 225 games. Drawn a lot of praise from Astros manager Dusty Baker in camp this spring. Just seems ready to take that step forward and sort of do his best George Springer impression with more speed even. There's an opening at the leadoff spot in Houston because Springer's gone. Tucker hasn't posted good on base numbers at the MLB level yet, but he had a .375 OBP at AAA. Doesn't strike out a ton. Maybe there's a path to that top spot in the lineup. I know Dusty Baker was talking about Miles Straw up there. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe Altuve or Bregman, but I feel like Tucker's the best guy for that role. I know they don't want to put a ton of pressure on him, but he's sort of the dude there now to me. I like him as much as Bregman and maybe even more, like if we're talking overall draft board.
Yeah, we've been waiting on this forever, and maybe he's a lesson that you have to have a little bit of patience, with prospects. Some of it was just the Astros handling of him, which was very
it was situational.
Yeah, I've had Tucker in a score sheet dynasty league since they drafted him, which has been like one of the most frustrating processes. But it's nice to have him as one of my keepers now. But yeah, I think this is his time. Last year, average exit velocity was 84th percentile. He doesn't strike out a ton. It was 20.2% last year, which you can definitely live with. I don't think he's going to be a danger there as far as that's concerned. His XBA sat at 267. But like you were saying, I think just the more opportunities he got, the more comfortable he got. And I think that's what he's needed for the longest time, is just like set it and forget it, and like just give him the experience and he'll figure it out. Like he's that talented a player. Someone, again, who can give an impact to you across the board, which is something you want to lock in early in your draft.
Yep. I had Luis Robert at number 9.
Okay. I have him 11th, and I have Whit Merrifield 9th.
Okay. I have Whit Merrifield 11th. I'll talk up Robert. If a 2-month season can be like a tale of 2 seasons, that's what we saw with him. Was awesome through the end of August. 298 batting average, 960 OPS, 10 homers, 4 steals through his first 33 games. And then it like all fell apart. 136 batting average, 409 OPS, only 1 home run over 23 games in September. He did show pretty well in the wild card series, but that was only 3 games as the White Sox got knocked off by the A's. So in general, just like an odd set of data we're looking at here. The poor final 4 weeks really tanked his rate stats, but he still finished on a 162 game pace of 32 homers, 26 steals, which is the kind of counting stats upside that he flashed in the minor leagues. Like his 2019 was nuts. Between three different levels, high A, double A, and triple A, batted 328, 376 OBP, 624 slug, 32 homers, 36 steals in 122 games. I'm buying the upside, and that, you know, he would have made adjustments had his rookie season lasted more than 60 games. Maybe it was like, this is a narrative, but maybe it was like helpful to him in the long term that he experienced that slump in such a short sample. Like it came to an end, kind of humbled him, perhaps forced him to work a little harder this winter. I love the 5 category potential. I think he's an incredible athlete. Defensively, he's tremendous. Tony La Russa has just been raving about him. Just like his run out of superlatives at this point are only 2 weeks into camp.
Yeah, I mean, he did hurt his hand, if I remember right, and I think it was like the last week of August.
Yeah,
and it depends on what you want to blame it on. Is it the hand that hampered his production? Was it that the league started to catch up to him, and he just wasn't able to make the adjustments in time, or like some combination of the two? That led to that sort of September swoon. Hit 136 with a 409 OPS in September. So, there's some risk here for sure.
Yeah.
He's just not someone you're necessarily trusting, but then again, the upside is so high that, if you really want to go for it, I get it. And there's at least some speed here that gives a bit of a floor, the power as well. I think the counting stats will be fine. But the batting average is certainly something, maybe you're going to be concerned about.
Yeah, fair.
And with Whit Merrifield, we talked about him in our second base episode. It was nice to see him bounce back with his speed. Last year went 12 for 15 in stolen bases. That was after he was caught 10 times in 30 attempts in 2019. So basically like a 30 steal pace over a full season. So nice to see that. Best contact rate of his career last season. Again, I'm looking for safety here. I'm looking for speed early. I'm usually not a Merrifield fan, but this year I'm kind of in on it because I'm looking at Matthew Poliat does our projections for our draft guide, and I'm looking at the projected stolen base leaders, and man, it's like the saddest thing. So if you can get Merrifield, early, basically you can get him third round, maybe late third round. That's pretty good, and you get the multi-position eligibility too, which is nice.
Yeah, I've usually been down on him too, but kind of buying in this year because I like that Royals lineup, and he should sit atop it a lot. The speed came back in full force, batting average, a little bit of power. Definitely offers a really safe floor.
Yeah,
I had George Springer 10th.
Yeah, I have Marcell Ozuna 10th. Springer's down a little bit on my board, but let's see where he is. He's 19th for me.
Whoa. All right. That seems aggressive. Is it just because he didn't sign with the Mets?
I took that personally, as the meme goes.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about Ozuna. Destroyed baseballs last season. Got a 4-year, $65 million contract out of it. After going with a 1-year deal last winter, returning to the Braves obviously fit in quite well there. The batted ball data is through the roof from 2020. Drew more walks, which was really encouraging. So hopefully all the gains hold up.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the batted ball data was awesome. He's kind of been one of those players who's shown that before. I remember when he was with the Cardinals, where we were like, wait, but he's hitting the ball hard, but he was hitting like 240. It finally came together as soon as he left the Cardinals. That doesn't
sounds about right. There's another guy on my list that
yeah, that's right. But the contact rate last year with Ozuna was down a little bit, 70.6% compared to 74.1% for his career. I do not think he's a 338 hitter over a full 162 game season. So I'd look more like 275 is where I'd set like my baseline. But the power, I think is totally legitimate. Hitting in the middle of that Braves lineup, which, we love. That Braves lineup is a powerhouse, if they're clicking on all cylinders. So I expect the huge power numbers, runs scored, RBIs, he could drive in 120, 35 homers, just huge numbers there.
0 stolen base attempts last year. 58th percentile in sprint speed. He had 12 steals in 2019, but that was kind of a career outlier.
Yeah, you're definitely, counting on a lot of that power production. That's certainly true, and we can probably say that about another slugger here in a minute as well.
Yeah, Ozuna went around picks 80 to 90 last year, in the low 40s now. So, I mean, that 2 months, he did well for himself.
Yep.
I'd be a little bit worried about it carrying over, but he seems so comfortable in Atlanta and hidden behind a bunch of first and second round and third round picks too. All guys we like in fantasy. The top of that lineup should eat. Really, the whole lineup could eat. So I had George Springer 10. I'll just talk about him because you hate him. The last 2 years combined, 284 batting average, 953 OPS, 53 home runs, 128 RBIs, 133 runs in 173 games. So just over a full season. And the metrics back it up too. He hasn't stolen a lot of bases lately, only one in 2020, but he's not slow necessarily.
Yeah.
And batting leadoff, or even like 2 or 3 in a very good Blue Jays lineup at some homer-friendly parks too. Reading up on it a bit, and I'm stealing others' research here. TD Ballpark in Dunedin, Florida, where they'll play through at least mid-May, it sounds like. That's a very homer-friendly park. There's wind in that area of the Gulf, and the same dimensions as Rogers Center in Toronto. They actually renovated it, I think, in the early 2020, and tried to make it kind of look like Rogers Center, at least dimensions-wise. And the city of Toronto announced that there will be no in-person major events through July 2nd. So I guess that means no baseball games. So after Dunedin, the Blue Jays will probably go to Buffalo again and kick their AAA team to another, one of the many unused minor league ballparks around the country, which is a sad new reality. I just think Springer's set up for really good power, a safe floor, and high ceiling in 4 categories in that lineup. And I think maybe a tiny bit more productive with the steals than he's been recently. 82% sprint speed last year at age 30, 31. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that he could get, 10 steals, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and if Kevin Biggio hits 9th in front of Springer, that could be really good. I was, when I was making my list, I was kind of like, if Springer's batting leadoff, he's probably not going to drive in as many runs as Marcell Ozuna. He's not going to run, so that's kind of why I was like, maybe I want to move him down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if Biggio hits 9th in front of Springer, with the on base ability that he has, he could drive in 90.
Just to be transparent with our listeners too, like when you're ranking out 60 to 80 outfielders, or like at least when I am, at some point you stop fretting over whether a guy should be here or here, or like 2 spots lower or 1 spot lower. Like I'm sure you went through this, and so I'll probably wind up disagreeing with myself on some of these guys as we go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of trying to rank a bunch of different names and going through their profiles. As you start to dig into it, you form different opinions, which is kind of what this show's about.
Yeah. So I had Luis Robert at 11, and then I had Eloy Jimenez at 12, and that's kind of the comparable to Marcell Ozuna with me. Yeah. He's really coming to his own basically over the past year and a half. Now has 45 homers and 120 RBIs through 177 games in the majors. And I guess maybe the knock on Jimenez is that the patience leaves something to be desired. He did at least improve his contact rate last season. He also used the whole field a bit more, kind of altered the approach to not be as pull heavy. But the batted ball metrics love him. He was a 91st percentile in average exit velocity last year, 98th in hard hit percentage, 96th in barrel percentage. You love the lineup in the situation there with the White Sox. He's gonna cash in with the counting stats, but he's never attempted a stolen base in the majors. So I think you're banking on a lot to go right for him to climb any higher than his ADP, which is 35.52. So you're looking at a 3rd round pick. The bulk of this production is going to be power. Yeah. And that's what you need, everything to kind of go right there for him to produce at that rate.
I also have him at 12th, and he's been that power presence that everyone expected he would be, maybe even earlier than everyone expected him to be. Just turned 24 years old this winter. But like you said, doesn't draw many walks, so you really need him to stay on this trajectory to justify the commitment. What you said, 35 on NFC, it's 29th overall on Yahoo. He can probably do it, and if he does stay on this trajectory and is this 40 homer 120 RBI guy, he's going to clean up in that White Sox lineup. So definitely the power is intriguing. You wish he would develop a bit more overall plate skills, and he could. Man, he's still young.
Yeah. So before we continue, just a quick note that if you want to get our online draft guide or any of our premium products, here is a special offer. You can use promo code BASES10 for 10% off any premium subscription for NBC Sports Edge Plus. Can be either monthly or annual, and for any tier. So not only do you get access to our draft guide, but you also get season tools for NBA and NHL, which are in season right now. So it really is a great value and can help you if you just play baseball or if you have your hand in all sports. So remember, it's promo code BASES10, and you can go to NBCSportsEdge.com/MLB draft guide to get started.
We should try to go a little faster, so this isn't a 2-hour podcast, but
yeah, let's do it. So yeah, let's kind of skip around a little bit. Again, we're not going to talk about everyone, but so we hope you understand, but we don't want this podcast to put you to sleep.
So I had Aaron Judge at 14th. He's had trouble staying healthy, and that's hard to just cast aside, but was on a great path last year before that calf strain popped up last August. Then he had another setback, appeared in only 28 total games, but through his first 17 games, 1101 OPS, he was on an 86 homer, 191 RBI pace. Like, that's obviously small sample size theater, but we know the power upside is as good as anyone. And if the health cooperates, like, come on, he's at 54th overall in NFC. So that's super palatable as a guy who is sometimes a second-round pick in years past.
So I had Starling Marte 14th. I had Aaron Judge 13th. 15, I had Trent Grisham, who I think you wanted to talk about.
Well, I have him at 20th, and I'm glad because I'm glad you ranked him a little bit higher because I'm lower on him than some, maybe a lot of people. 20th outfielder sounds about right to me. 10 home runs, 10 steals in 59 games last year. That's a 162 game pace of 28 homers, 20 steals, and all the other counting stats that would go with it if he's batting high atop the lineup for, an exciting, dynamic Padres team. But like how dynamic that roster is does worry me a little bit. They faced 9 left-handed starters in September last year, and Grisham batted 9th in 7 of those games and sat out 2 of them. And now looking ahead to 2021, where I guess there will be no DH, is he going to bat 8th against lefties in front of the pitcher? Like, I think the ceiling here is really high with that power speed profile that we like. And I think he was 94th percentile in sprint speed. So that speed's no joke. I worry about the floor if he's going to hit 8th against lefties, which maybe he won't. But the Padres have options to put in that outfield. Jurickson Profar's back. Jake Cronenworth can play some corner outfield. It's just they're almost like a little too deep for me to really buy into Grisham's really good 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, at least against right-handers, he'll be at the top.
Yeah,
I think he can steal 20-plus bases over a full season, probably hit 20 homers too, maybe score 100 runs or at least close to it. I think he has some flaws. I think the batting average isn't going to be great. But the sample is still small enough with him that I think he could improve. But I do agree there's a decent amount of risk there. Speaking of risk, Randy Arozarena, I have it 16th.
Me too.
Yeah, and it was, it's hard. It's hard. But, between the postseason and what he did in the regular season last year, I mean, he basically produced like a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And, in the postseason, you're facing the best.
He produced like a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes. Yeah, basically that's true. And he was hitting rockets too. Like, it's not like he was making weak contact. Like, It was legit.
Yeah, against some of the best teams in baseball, too. Some of the best pitching in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, he was primarily attacking fastballs. So it'll be interesting to see, kind of how the league adjusts to him as they get a book on him. But with the power and the speed, the way that, he does make a lot of hard contact as well, I don't think this is that crazy to put him here on upside potential.
Yeah, I mean, combined his regular season last year and his postseason and what he did with the Cardinals in 2019, you get like a bit more of a sample size, 185 plate appearances, 335 average, 1125 OPS, 18 homers in 62 games, 10 homers in 20 postseason games alone last season. Prominent lineup spot with the Rays. The speed is a real thing too. Yeah. You can see the attractiveness, but like every fantasy analyst, every fantasy manager has to ask himself or herself whether like the hype here is fully justified. Just now this spring is the first time he's appeared on top 100 prospect lists at MLB Pipeline, Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus. I would think we can say there's definitely some natural regression coming. Yeah. We're just going to find out to what level that is.
Yeah, there's enough like swing and miss in his game to, it wouldn't be crazy to me if he hit like 250. You know what I mean? Like that's not crazy at all. But here's a question, and these guys are really close in ADP. Would you rather have Randy Arozarena, who has done something, granted in a small sample, versus Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? They both basically have the same ADP.
Arozarena.
Me too.
Yeah, okay.
And Vlad is actually going slightly higher, but they're like Vlad's ADP on NFC is 55.59. Arozarena is 57.64. I know they're different positions, but like, Arozarena is like shown that elite potential. He has speed.
He hits balls in the air.
Yeah. But Vlad is still a lot of projection. Granted, he did lose how many pounds did we?
42.
42. It's insane.
I don't think it's good. I don't
know what to think.
I mean, good for him, but did you work on the launch angle while you're doing it? Maybe it makes him more agile at the plate. I don't know. All right. I had Starling Marte at 15th. We said we were going fast, remember?
Yeah, let's do it. So I have Ian Happ at 17, which might be like my biggest like bold prediction. Matthew Poliat loves Ian Happ too. And kind of the way that I look at it, man, like over his last 115 games, which is the past two seasons since the start of 2019, 23 home runs and an 879 OPS. And that's just 115 games. So we're talking like a 30-plus homer pace over a full season. And don't forget, he fouled the ball off of his face in early September last year. And after that, he hit 153 with 0 homers over his final 81 plate appearances. So, he could have been even more on the radar in fantasy leagues. Like the ADP is 162.64, which seems super, super low. And I see a lot of upside here. I don't think he's someone you have to reach for and draft as like a number 17 outfielder on the board. You could probably wait a little while, but I think his production will be worth it.
Yeah, I had him at 23, which is quite a bit lower than you, but he's going as the 44th outfielder off the board on NFC. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. The Cubs lineup, they have not torn it down. That's a really good lineup as of right now, and probably going into the season. I think they might shake things up come the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I had Starling Marte at 15. He managed to appear in 61 games during the 60-game season, which is kind of funny. He played in some of those makeup double headers with the Marlins down the stretch after that trade from the Diamondbacks on August 31st. But yeah, he just kind of did his thing. 16 homer, 30 steal pace, decent average, runs scored. I think he's sort of a comp to Whit Merrifield if you squint. Batting second, maybe sometimes leadoff for Miami. An aggressive player. He'll keep using that speed at age 32. 15 might be a little high as I look over it again, but I think he's really safe, and he's going to get you a safe floor of steals, and he's got some power too. He's got more than 16 homer power. He can reach 20.
Yeah, and the Marlins lineup is looking at least a little bit more respectable these days. So
a little bit,
too. Yeah. A little bit.
Brandon Lau, I had 17th. He's not really an outfielder, but he did get in quite a few games there last year. We hyped him up during the second base episode, so definitely listen to that. Also going to mix in at third base this spring, apparently, or at least get reps there and workout, which, that would be a nice addition to his outfield and second base eligibility. Maybe like switches over to third late in games, even if he doesn't start there. The Rays like to get creative with that sort of stuff, and they have the roster to do it. So that third base eligibility could be big for Lau.
All right, so let's pick up the pace as we close things out here.
All right, Austin Meadows, I had 21st. I think it's crazy that he's falling out of the top 100 this year after going in the third round last year. It seems like a big-time overreaction to a pandemic-affected season in which he himself contracted COVID and
That's right.
also had a grade 2 oblique strain. So the numbers were not great, but he gets a pass for me. In 2019, 33 homers, 89 RBIs, 12 steals, 291 average, 922 OPS. He's only 25 years old, turns 26 in May, drawing rave reviews from Rays manager Kevin Cash for dropping weight this winter, but also adding muscle. Could bat leadoff against righties. I think a big bounce back is coming for him, and I don't really understand why people are so down on him.
So I put Anthony Santander at number 26 for me.
Ooh, that's high.
Yeah. Well, he was my bold prediction for the magazine. So I needed to stay consistent. So the ADP for Santander is 157.95. So again, kind of like Ian Happ, I don't think you have to draft him as high as I have him here, but he's another one of those players that was hurt late in the year, had an oblique injury, which ended his season early and kind of cut off what was a breakout season for him. And really the best hitter, I think, in the Orioles lineup last year, outside of when Ryan Mountcastle came up and, did a nice job cutting down on his strikeouts last year, lofted the ball more often, saw a nice uptick in his barrel percentage. He was respectable enough in 2019, but, really put things together, getting an opportunity with a rebuilding team and really taking advantage of it. He's not someone who's going to steal bases, but having to play, half his games in Camden Yards, gets to go to the other AL East ballparks. If he stays healthy for a full 162, I think he could be a 35 homer, 100 RBI guy.
I had Byron Buxton at 31. And we just did that mock draft with essentially the entire NBC Sports EDGE staff, and the veteran most staff member, Matthew Pouliot, took Buxton at 64th overall. I can't say I'm that high on him, but the ADP right now on Yahoo is 123.7. That's late for a player who hit 13 home runs in 39 games last season, a 55 homer pace, and who we also know can steal a lot of bases. He's, is he going to play 162 games? Is he going to play 140? Durability has been a big issue, and he's kind of got to watch himself a bit with the aggressiveness on defense. But the upside overall is incredible. Age 27 season. I like him more around like pick 80 to 90 than 64, but I like him a lot better than the 123 ADP.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think the injury history is probably the big reason he is where he is. But yeah, I mean, the power and the speed, putting it together there, at least from the power perspective.
Yeah, it's a possibility that he just puts it all together.
Yeah,
and he can be a top 10, top 5. I mean, he could be like a first round pick if he really puts it all together. He has that kind of ability.
So one potential bust for me is Alex Verdugo. And it's not like he's going super high. I think he's, NFC 128.38. So it's not super high, but he hit 308 last year. He's in the Red Sox lineup. I think there's going to be some degree of hype there, especially since he's so young still. But, while he hit 308 last year, he had a 371 BABIP. He struck out 20.4% of the time, which is a little disappointing given what he's been billed as and what his contact rate was with the Dodgers. His XBA was actually 239, so it didn't back up what he did last year. And he's not exactly a huge power source, so he needs that area of his game, his batting average, to really hold on to his value. Or otherwise, we're kind of looking at a Nick Markakis type if that doesn't hold, or maybe Andrew Benintendi, which probably Red Sox fans don't want to hear. But you still like the lineup in the ballpark. I think he'll be fine, but I'd be careful about stretching for him too early when there's guys you can get late who can give you a lot of power, can give you some speed. I think Verdugo, you're really banking on the batting average, and that could be a mistake.
I had Eddie Rosario at 34. He seems to have become a little bit underrated, maybe because the free agent market wasn't too kind to him this winter. Had to settle for a 1-year, $8 million deal from the Indians. He's definitely a flawed player in real life, doesn't get on base enough, not good defensively, but for fantasy purposes, he has 45 home runs and 151 RBIs in 194 games since the beginning of 2019, hitting behind Jose Ramirez, probably in front of Franmil Reyes and Josh Naylor, who I think is kind of a sleeper. The rest of that lineup in Cleveland is rough, but that's a good homer park. I think there's a really safe floor of power production here. I'll jump to Kyle Lewis, who I had at 39. 2020 AL Rookie of the Year, has an 824 OPS with 17 home runs and 5 stolen bases through his first 76 major league games. Already 25 years old. That early career knee injury robbed him of like an earlier arrival in the bigs. Was a top 30 prospect basically as soon as the Mariners drafted him, 11th overall in 2016. So this has all taken a little while to happen for Kyle Lewis, but he's a big piece for that organization, soon to be surrounded by Jared Kelenic and Julio Rodriguez. He's not super fast, but should be like a light contributor in the steals category with pretty good power and a prominent lineup spot in Seattle.
Speaking of Jared Kelenic, I have Kelenic 38th on my outfielder list, and I know that's aggressive, and maybe he's not going to be up right away, especially if you listen to their former president, Kevin Mather, but Kelenic can do everything. And I think when he comes up as far as like net production, he's capable of meeting that and maybe then some. Has a 290, 366, 516 batting line through 173 pro games, 29 home runs, 35 steals in that time. He can just do everything. And I think given the way this is all going down, like he told Bob Nightingale of USA Today that, he's the victim of service time manipulation and that he turned down the contract extension last year. Like he thinks maybe the Mariners are holding it against him. And since this is also out in the open with what Mather said, like, I wonder if the Mariners, like, their hand gets forced and like he has to be on the opening day roster. I'm just putting that out there as a possibility. I'm setting my expectations for late April, but maybe it won't be that way. And I think Kelenic can match this, number 38 on my list.
I think it'll be April 28th. Exactly.
Okay. That's very possible.
Yeah. I had Mike Yastremski at 40. One of the breakout stars of the weird 2020 season. Batted 297, 968 OPS, 10 homers, 35 RBIs, 39 runs scored in 54 games for the Giants. Took advantage of Oracle Park playing a lot more hitter-friendly than it has in the past. They moved the bullpens from foul territory to like the outfield, so brought in the walls in center and right center. They also closed off that viewing area in right field where people could congregate outside the stadium, and that seemed to help some of the wind patterns where where that stadium is situated in a section of San Francisco Bay.
Right.
Will that viewing area be opened back up? Like, that's a good question. Probably won't be answered until closer to opening day. Or did it have that much of an effect too? It seems like it did. But I sort of like that lineup all of a sudden, and Yastremski's locked in as the number 3 hitter, could even bat second sometimes. I think he's kind of for real with, kind of a safe floor for how late he's going.
Yeah, I think the Giants lineup is underrated, and we'll get a larger sample of their home games this year, but we might need to start looking at the Giants a little bit differently than we have in the past. But then again, if the ball has changed, who knows? So I have Clint Frazier at 40, and over the past 108 games, this is over the past 2 seasons, 20 homers and an 844 OPS. Another one of those guys that like Kyle Tucker, like we've been waiting on forever. Finally getting his chance, had a 905 OPS last year. Still struck out a fair amount, but showed a ton of patience, was very selective, especially on pitches outside of the strike zone. Expected to be the regular left fielder for the Yankees this season, which is great news. We can finally see that full-fledged breakout.
Brett Gardner.
Yeah, I know. I was just about to say the Brett Gardner factor. Yankees did bring him back. That's a little bit of a threat, but I don't know, maybe more of a threat for Aaron Hicks. I don't know. I think they just need to leave Clint Frazier alone and let him do his thing. But I know the Yankees love Clint Frazier.
Yeah.
Or the Yankees love Brett Gardner.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so. I hope he plays there every day. I had Dylan Carlson, 45th. Got off to an awful start last year as a rookie. The Cardinals demoted him to their alternate training site on September 8th, and at the time made it sound like he would not be brought back up. But they had to play a bunch of makeup doubleheaders down the stretch after their early season COVID outbreak. So he did return later in September and was batting cleanup by the end of their postseason run. 22 years old, still a consensus top 15 prospect, had 26 homers, 20 steals, and 126 games between AA and AAA in 2019. Kind of like a Jared Kelenic light, but he's already in the majors and could bat cleanup again behind Tommy Edman, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, or maybe even second in front of Goldschmidt and Arenado. The situation, the profile, Carlson's overall numbers from 2020, at least the regular season, were not good, but you can get him pretty late. And I think he's worth taking a chance on as kind of a post-type guy, even though he was only a bust for a month and a half, and then he was good.
Right.
I think he's worth taking a chance. And I had AJ Pollock at 50, managed to avoid the injured list during the 60-game season. I think he would like more 60-game seasons. And was great. 566 slugging percentage, 881 OPS, 16 homers, 34 RBIs in 55 games. That's a 48 homer, 101 RBI pace with some encouraging StatCast metrics to back it up. He's always been a good player, Pollock. Just hasn't had the health to always make an on-field impact. But the injury risk is built into the cost. 189 ADP on NFC, 173 on Yahoo. He'll way outperform that ADP if he stays mostly healthy.
So I have Kyle Schwarber at 45. Was non-tendered by the Cubs. Hit just 188 over 59 games last season, but the power was still there. Slugged 11 homers. His contact rate wasn't really any different from 2019. I guess you wonder a little bit, his fly ball rate was down compared to previous seasons, but he still hit the ball plenty hard, showed his usual patience, and I think the Nationals bring him aboard. That's a great move. Don't forget, Schwarber had 38 homers with a 122 OPS plus in 2019. So I don't really want to make too much out of the shortened season. I'd rather look at the 2018, 2019 numbers. I think he's a really solid late round power play.
Raimel Tapia at 57. I've usually had a bias against Tapia because there were other Rockies players I wanted to see more of instead of him. But now that David Dahl's gone and Ian Desmond is talking about opting out of the final year of his deal, it's kind of the Tapia show, which is sad. I don't think that lineup is very good, but he's the possible everyday leadoff man. Manager Bud Black sort of confirmed that was a possibility the other day and said he thought Tapia could win a batting title. He had a 321 average last year. That's way up from his career prior, but maybe it's not too crazy. You're not going to get a ton of power, but he did steal 8 bases over his final 43 games last season. So his 25 to 30 stolen bases within range with a good batting average. And maybe there is a bit of power. I think he's an intriguing low-risk way to get a piece of the Coors Field effect.
So Victor Robles, I have 50th.
Ooh, I don't even know where I had him.
I don't know what to do with him. I think judging by his ADP, nobody really knows at this stage. And Robles going into last year, he put on a lot of muscle. And I think people were like, oh yeah, here comes the power breakthrough. And it just didn't work for him. Hit 3 homers. Stole just 4 bases over 52 games, hit 220. Just didn't work out for him. His strikeout rate was up to 28% last year. And still, looking at barrel percentage, average exit velocity, there was 0 improvement. It was already bad, and it didn't get really any better. So the Nationals actually sent him to winter ball, hoping that, his style of play can adjust to, the added physique that he had. The other thing to talk about is, his sprint speed was down last year with the bulk, and his defense suffered, which you don't want to see. So to me, it's I don't know what player is going to show up this year. Is it going to be the speedy, defensive first kind of outfielder, or is it going to be someone more focused on power? I really don't know, but either way, he doesn't have a good approach at the plate. Probably not going to hit first or second anytime soon. So Yeah, I'm down on him right now until he shows like real signs of progress.
I had Leody Taveras at 59. So yeah, the Rangers launched into another youth movement last year and look ready to fully lean on Taveras as their everyday center fielder and possible leadoff man. The rate stats were underwhelming last season, but he did put up 4 homers and 8 steals over his first 33 major league games, 20 homer, 39 steal pace. 22 years old, probably not super well known to the casual fan, going at pick number 236 in the average Yahoo draft right now. So he's basically free to find out if he can actually be like a 30 stolen base. I wouldn't say 20 homer, maybe like 15 homer guy.
The last name I'm going to talk about, and this is like digging really late, is Mitch Haniger. 273, 10 ADP on NFC right now. Didn't play at all last year. Has appeared in just 63 games since the start of 2019. Of course, that's due to multiple surgeries on his groin after fouling a ball off himself in June of 2019. He did back surgery last February, so it's just been a brutal 19 months for him. But prior to that, Haniger was a very good player. He hit 285 with 26 homers, 83 RBIs, 8 steals over 157 games in 2018. You do wonder a little bit how the layoff might impact him, where he is physically at this point, but it's basically free to find out. And I also think, if he gets off to a hot start, the Mariners could trade him to a more attractive situation with a contender. And there could be some value coming out of that. So, I think he's worth a shot. I think we're hearing positive reports so far. So we'll see if he bounces back. We're certainly rooting for him.
I'll hit on 2 more guys and then buy the draft guide. We could just go on and on. So many outfielders. I'd rather go this deep with like starting pitcher, to be honest. I feel like it's a little more interesting, but if you're still sticking around, thanks for listening. Nick Senzel, there's a glut of outfielders still in Cincinnati, especially if the universal DH thing doesn't happen again, which it looks for now that it won't. But manager David Bell said this week, and this is late February, so the second week of camp, that Senzel will open the season as the team's everyday center fielder, or at least primary center fielder. Shogo Akiyama could work in there a bit. Senzel has battled a lot of different injuries through the early part of his professional career, but he has the power, speed, profile, and a good home park to showcase that power. Really interesting post-type guy, I think. Going 259th overall right now on Yahoo. And then Mauricio Dubon, it looks like the Giants have made a commitment to him as their starting center fielder. That's where he mostly played the infield early on with the Red Sox and Brewers organizations. He doesn't strike out much at all. Batted .302 with an .822 OPS, 20 homers, 10 steals in 123 minor league games in 2019. Had a 38 steal season in the minors in 2017. This is one of those late speed options, and he should be a contributor in other areas too. I think this is a possible age 26 breakout coming.
Yeah, I like Dubon a lot. So that completes our outfield preview. We could discuss more, but like Drew was saying, get the online draft guide and you'll see a lot more.
I got to go to the bathroom.
We're actually doing these position showdowns where we have all of our staff rankings. We're going to get to outfielders very soon. So a lot of in-depth coverage there with our draft guide. So definitely check that out. Stay tuned on Monday for our next episode, which is our catcher breakdown for the 2021 season. If you like what you're hearing from this show, Circling the Bases, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review if you don't mind. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already. I'm at DJ Short. Drew is at Drew Silva. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next time.